Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We will be starting soon. Let's just wait for a few people to come in before we can start. Let's just give a few people some time to come in and then we can start our presentation. We'll be starting our presentation in a few minutes. Good afternoon, and welcome to our webinar on automated property valuations. Thank you so much for honoring the invitation. We believe that we have got a few more people that will show up as we continue through the day or through the next hour. Feel free to send your questions. There's a Q&A button on your far left that we will address, or I'll address either during the presentation or at the end, depending on how many questions you ask and what the questions are related to. If what we're going to discuss will be part of the presentation, I'll address at the point of the presentation. But if it is about something that's not covered in the presentation, we'll talk about it at the end of the presentation. Otherwise, welcome and thank you so much for the time. Just to confirm that I am completely audible. Can I have a few emoticons or a few smiley faces or something just to show? I think some of you are able to speak. Just confirm that you can hear me. Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you so much. So in regards to the presentation today, this is how I'm going to go about it. I'm going to do a bit of an introduction of GoSmart Value, where we come from, just to give a background to those who we have never interacted before, and this is your first interaction with GoSmart Value or myself as Sethebe Manake. And then I'm going to go into why are we talking about automated valuations now, their essence, and where they're being applied, and why are they important for us to be thinking about and using at this point. And then I'm going to talk about the application of automated valuation models across different types of uses, and then how we would be applying them here in Botswana, the relevance of them, and then we'll open for a Q&A. Just in terms of the bit of a background, so GoSmart Value is an element of Vantage Properties, which was first registered in 2008 in Botswana. And then we did some consulting between 2010 and 2014. Apologies for that. I've asked them to reduce. There's a bit of a construction site that's happening here. I have tried to have them reduce it. Apologies for that. Yeah, so 2010, 2014, we were doing a bit of consulting across the different jurisdictions of the continent. And then 2015, 17, we won a few awards around real estate and around the work that we're doing in the real estate forum. And in 2017 was really the beginning of our digital transformation, or the beginning of our digital journey and the development of a GoSmart Value. So that started off with us being part of the eFounders program. I don't know why there's an echo. Let me see what I can do here about that echo. Please confirm if the echo is still there. Okay. Yes, as I was saying, we went on, oh great. We went on 2019, then started testing and building GoSmart Value, had some successful raises for our technology, and now we have this automated property valuation platform, which also provides market insights. And now we've got partnerships with a few insurance companies, and a few banks are coming on board. And the key thing is for us to solve for the transparent real estate market, and which is why we are speaking about automated property valuations today. So the question, why now and why today? It comes down to the basic needs that are coming up in the market as we speak today. So the automation of property valuations is not a new thing, as I said in the beginning. But the key things that have come up quite clearly in the market, no matter which sector you're talking about, is efficiency. Everybody's talking about efficiency when you talk about the lending environment, when you talk about the investing environment. Everybody's looking at reducing costs, reducing time used, and maximizing on efficiency, increasing the number of transactions that are done at a time, but also ensuring major returns. And that is what has made efficiency a very critical conversation to have in every sector, no matter what it is. A few years ago, it would have been just fine to have your valuation done over a 2-week period. In fact, 2 weeks was a good time for you to have it completed. But now, when you're talking about 3 days for evaluation to be done, it feels like it's forever. And with the advent of technology, why can't we make it even a shorter period? When it comes to cost, we all know that everybody's concerned about costs. Costs are going up. Cost of inputs are going up. As such, value for money has taken center stage. No matter as an individual, as a company, as a corporate, you want to make sure that you pay only for what you receive and what you value, what you're interested in. And that means that you're not prepared to pay extra just because somebody has spent extra time on doing something. The extra means it must be the extra time spent must result in extra value that is derived for you. As such, it is important for service providers and any kind of product providers to look at the cost of their inputs and to ensure that they deliver a better output with minimum input costs. Is an increasing appetite for transactions. There is an increasing appetite for speed of transactions being concluded faster. And the component of valuation is no longer acceptable as the thing that takes a long time to conclude, or the factor that makes a transaction take a long time to be concluded. As such, it is important for valuations to be reviewed, or the valuation process to be reviewed, to see if it can be made to be faster. Important thing comes out, talks about consistency. And at this point in time, everybody wants to make sure that no matter what kind of transaction they're in, that their transaction will be treated consistently. The calculations of all transactions will be done consistently for all players, to reduce the number of variable risks. Everybody right now is managing their risks, and as such, they do not want who does their valuation or how their valuation is done to be the thing that increases the risk of real estate investment, or the risk of whatever endeavor that they're entering into. Most recently, some of you may know or may not know of the new amendment of the Tribal Land Act, which then one of the amendments, or one of the key amendments that are brought up by the Act, is the fact that now tribal land can be sold without any development on it. And historically, there hasn't been a recording of any of the transactions that were done in tribal land. And that means now there's a whole process of registering tribal land, because now it is considered, it can be a secured registration with the deeds office. And as such, that releases a whole new market of trading in real estate through tribal land. And as such, there will be a need for processing, a higher demand for valuations, a higher demand for transparency within that space, and a higher demand for accuracy, which is now what customers are looking for. So just as a reminder, the key things that are driving, or the reason why this is a necessary conversation to have now, is efficiency, to achieve efficiency in the market, to reduce costs of input so that the cost of the service itself can drop, to improve the quality, the accuracy, the scaling capability must also be improved so that more can be done by more people in less time, so that nobody feels or nobody is disadvantaged in the process. Nobody loses a deal because valuation firms cannot take on sufficient or cannot take on a certain number of jobs at a time. And then the most important one is consistency. In all transactions, everybody's looking to have consistent view of their transaction so that they're treated fairly, because now we are talking about a scenario where your valuation influences not only how much funding you have, how much tax you're going to pay on that particular property, and perhaps maybe in the near future how much rate you're going to pay on that property. So it is absolutely essential that each property is treated with consistency, even when it is for compensation of land, because one of the key things that are brought about by the Tribal Land Act is that compensation for expropriation will also be done on the basis of open market value. So the critical thing is that the reason why the automated valuation conversation is important now is that we actually need it as a nation at this point in time. Then we come down to what are the factors that are driving technology in real estate. And these are things that maybe before they were not available, they were not possible, or it was just difficult to put together or acquire. Now, these days with technology, there are multiple sources of data that one can put together. We have seen the use of how these days a lot of valuers are now using Google Maps to find the location of where they are, what they are talking about, and also to view where the comparables that they are using to value particularly residential properties are. Google Maps is being used here and there to determine different types of things. I mean, traffic is able, Google Maps is able to give you traffic routes, traffic flows for a particular location. So you find that there are different sources of data. Now you can have, there's now website scrapping, which is now making it possible to source that kind of data when it comes to a real estate. There is a high advancement in technology. We have seen the advent of machine learning and how it's being used by other industries. And its application in the real estate industry has become very clear that it adds some value to the industry in that regard. So there is an increased use of technology. There's advancement of technology. There's different types of technologies that have come in, not just machine learning, there's big data, there's all of these different types of things that bring in the technology into real estate. We mustn't forget that the advancement of technology is also driven by the appetite of the users. I mean, now we are seeing more and more people search for property online before they go on to the physical site visit. And that means that technology is already incorporated into our lives. Therefore, it is natural for it to be incorporated into the services that we use, and real estate is one of those. there is a reducing cost of technology, and that means that the access to technology is increasing, and as such, the application of technology in real estate becomes imminent. There's increased speed of transactions, as I said, as already spoken about earlier, where people want to see transactions happening a lot faster. They want to do a lot of investment in different types of areas and are normally assessing different transactions at a time in different places. And technology makes it easier for one to assess all of these things much faster instead of taking 6 months assessing a single investment in a single location. We have also seen precedents in other industries where technology has been used to achieve efficiencies, to reduce wastage, to reduce costs. As such, it is a normal progression for technology to be factored into the real estate industry. As we continue on, where we are seeing application of automated valuation models across the globe, it is in residential lending. We are seeing it being applied in different areas for different reasons. I mean, we're seeing it in residential mortgage lending, origination, remortgaging, and the key thing that is being assessed by the lender is really the risk appetite for the loan that is being put as security against that property is a security form. We are seeing automated valuations being applied for non-performing loans, for a lot of financial institutions who find themselves in a high level of non-performing loan scenario. They are now doing automated property valuations to ensure that they are in check in terms of where exactly is their recovery levels, what exactly are they able to recover out of that sector. Risk-weighted asset assessments, or where exactly should they be, what kind of assets should they be financing, and how much of a risk have they already allocated to that type of property. We are seeing automated property valuations being used there. And then one of the key elements that, the key changes that have happened in the past couple of years is the IFRS 9 requirement that requires that financial institutions revalue their collateral every 2 to 3 years. As such, there is an application of automated property valuations in that regard. And then we are also seeing just normal loan book valuations for financial institutions to keep track with where exactly their loan book sits, especially now where the economy is not doing very, very well. Financial institutions are looking at where exactly are they expecting their loan books to sit? Are they seeing their loan books growing? Are they stagnating? Are they falling? So that they can make the necessary adjustments or necessary adjustments for their loan books. For open-ended funds, we haven't had many of those locally, especially that are related to real estate, but at a global level, open-ended funds would continue to use automated property valuations for them to keep track of exactly the entry points of each investor and those that are leaving the fund, for the valuations to be the informant of the value that each particular investor has contributed or has extracted value in terms of in the fund. I'm just waiting for the slide to change there for me. Okay, great. So as we would know, the valuation process, the most simplified version of the valuation process would have in it an inspection, a property inspection itself, an inspection of documentation, a sourcing of comparables and general market information, collation and analysis of the information that has been provided, and then ultimately a generation of a valuation report. What we are seeing is that the different versions of automated property valuations are not necessarily automating this entire process, but they're delving into doing the things, the data processing and availing of information that has to do with all of these different processes. The inspection of documentation, the sourcing of comparables is being done at that level, and then the collation and analysis, where you find that a lot of the times the valuers who are involved in these different hybrid models are now more involved in the interpretation of the ultimate valuation report that is generated at the end, as opposed to being involved in the analysis of information, the sourcing of the information, or the inspection of the documentation. As such, that increases, as we spoke about earlier, it increases scalability of the valuation business. It improves consistency, because once the machine has learned what exactly it needs to be assessing in any kind of documentation, how it evaluates and sources the comparables, and what kind of market information influences the valuation is done. Once it has got all of that, it will do that consistently without error. The error that we have accepted in valuations historically, that there is a margin of error that will get involved as long as a human being is involved, and that is across all industries. And as such, you find that the automation of the valuation process in the different hybrid models allows for this to be done at that level. So different considerations and different kinds of data is used in automated valuation, or in valuations in general. So there is the assessment or the consideration of the rights on a particular property. There is a consideration of the building costs we're concerned. There is a consideration of land rates, proximity to amenities, sales transactions for comparable sakes, exactly what location it is, looking at the perception of that particular location, the perception or the attrition that people have towards that particular location, the attrition that people have towards that particular locality, and the land use, the association of value based on that particular land use. So as such, when you do the automated valuation, what is very, very critical is that these sources of data need to be verifiable. These sources of data need to be consistent. These sources of data need to be sustainably reliable in terms of provision of that kind of data, in order to ensure the consistency, that in order to ensure the scalability, and also to ensure that the valuations themselves are calculated appropriately and correctly. When we talk about the impact of technology, we have what is referred to as the 7 V's of big data, because that is what essentially we are using in terms of automated property valuations. The first one being velocity, which speaks to the speed at which data is created, processed, and stored and analyzed. With big data, with the new types of technologies that exist, this can be done faster, much faster than any human being is able to. In relation to valuation, it is the potential to obtain the data in real time as it happens. As the transaction happens, that particular information is able to influence the very next transaction that happens, thereby in real time. Variety speaks to how much of the data is unstructured, and that cannot be neatly slotted into it. Like you cannot put it in any of those particular boxes, but it actually influences the value of a particular property. For instance, when one looks at a property on social media and they comment perhaps that they don't like that neighborhood, or they don't like that particular property, perhaps on Twitter, perhaps on Facebook, then it creates a perception that people would have when looking at properties in that particular area, depending on how much influence that particular phrase is. If enough people say they don't like a particular type of property, it may impact the value of that particular property or that kind of property. So that's what speaks to the variety of data that is available out there, that's just sourced from all over different data points that can influence how real estate is perceived. Variability, it is similar to the meaning of apparently similar data can be different, specifically when it comes to language, where two sentences may appear to be different, but they have the same sentiment or they provide the same kind of expression. So somebody can say, what a great neighborhood to live in, and another can say, in that particular neighborhood, my bike was stolen. So the experience was very, very different. So that's the variability of the kind of information that would be available. That makes it big data very essential in terms of automated valuations. Visualization, data needs to be represented in a way that can be understood by a client. We have had a lot of the times, I think in the past 5 years, we have seen, especially financial institutions, try and break down the valuation report to something that they are able to utilize to just have the information that they need. But we should make it possible that, especially with automated valuations, that information is presented to the user, the one who's paying for it, in a format that they're able to use it for different types of purposes. And then the last V is increased efficiency. I've spoken about increased efficiency that's provided by all the different V's that are there, that brings in a greater efficiency, that brings in greater value for the user of automated valuation or the client that is being served at the time. Taking some time. So in terms of our automated property valuations, we have got 3 different types of models that are available for different types of users. We have what is called an instant valuation, which is mainly for residential, which is used by individuals for different types of purposes, determining what price I should sell a property, if I'm buying it at the right kind of price. We also have a hybrid model, which incorporates the use of a valuer to inspect and validate and verify the information that has been provided. And that particular valuer who uses that model is also able to benefit from the technology that is backing the instant valuation model, and that improves their accuracy because then they have access to all the global information that has to do with that particular property to make better decisions. And then we also provide bulk valuations that have to do with the loan book valuations that financial institutions do, the non-performing loan types of valuations that they do, because they are significant. I mean, for us, the highest number of valuations we've had to do is at one time was about 2,500. And if you're able to do that number of valuations at a time, you have got a high level of efficiency, you have scalability, and as such, you're able to achieve higher in terms of risk assessment or in terms of risk mitigation when it comes to the loans process. So the application of AVMs, just as a recounter, what we have experienced, residential lending, non-performing loans, risk-weighted assets assessments, IFRS requirements, loan book valuations, open-ended funds, property rate roll. We know we haven't had our rate roll reviewed in such a long time. So this is the time for us to have a rate roll review, and it is possible with automated property valuations. Tax collection with BRS to do the whether the valuation is done by them or it's done by the property owner themselves, the instant one makes it easier, more consistent, and more efficient to be used for the tax calculations. For AML to be able to determine if transactions are within the bounds of reality within that particular market, where one cannot be paying a significantly higher amount of money than necessary to process or to clean the funds that they have illicitly acquired. Compensation or open market value, or compensation now, as I spoke about earlier, can now be done with open market valuation. So if the government is acquiring large parcels of land that affect a lot of people, then the consistency in the automated valuation will provide the open market valuation in a much easier way. And then for insurance purposes, like we said earlier, we've got a few insurance companies that we're working with that are looking at using automated property valuations for insurance purposes. And then definitely for estate planning, if you're looking at reviewing your portfolio and ensuring that you are allocating the right kind of value to the assets that you're planning for. With all of that, I don't know if there's any questions at this point, but we have reached our Q&A point, and there hasn't been any questions that have come onto the panel, but I will be opening for questions. You may ask any questions at this point. Are there any questions? You can raise up your hand or put them on the Q&A. The ones here have been answered. Okay, there's a question. What data are you going to use for valuations in outlying areas? So there has been some collation of transactions that were based on common law leases. So that's the starting point. The other thing that we have done with machine learning is process all the different data sets that exist and then do projections based on the variables that come out from the location and the locality. The model continues to be tested as transactions come on and the deeds information keeps getting updated. It gets better and better and better. So at this point, it's the common law lease transactions and then the automated model. The process is the same. If it's a residential, thank you, Kim. If it's a residential property, for instance, right now, that's in Parakarungu, and there are transactions in Parakarungu. When you put in the details of that particular property, it's able to calculate its valuation based on different transactions that have happened in Parakarungu. So the starting point would be if there has been land that was just sold in Parakarungu, it would be a factor in the model. The other thing would be where Parakarungu's development is and the affinity or the attrition that people have to that particular location. And then that'll be able to calculate the valuation in that regard. There, I saw a hand here. I'm not sure. Yes, Julia, you may speak. You may unmute your mic and then speak. The last question there.
Sorry,
you're absolutely right, and that's why it's very, very important to understand modeling against where there's a human being who's calculating. So the model does work everywhere in the country. So the key thing is to identify that, and I can't say that I can explain to the detail of the model without getting into a very intensive mathematical lecture. So the way machine learning works is that you give to it a lot of different data sets, and the way that, and then you teach it how to determine valuation in particular areas by providing it with different, what do we call it, with different attributes. So you tell it when it's rural, this is how you make the decision. When it's an area with low transactions, this is how you make the decision. When it's an area that's like this, so it learns how to do that based on the number of data sets that we provided, and then it's able to provide the calculation. It's not a mathematical. It's not like a simple formula that I can be able to say, no, it then calculates, it adds this, and then it subtracts that. It really is a machine learning model that learns from the different aspects that affected or that influence valuation in that regard. Yes, it works everywhere. Kim, yes, it works for Pakalani too. It works everywhere. The differentiator is when we started the modeling, we were purely using the data only from deeds without actually building a machine learning model. So now it's learned from the data that comes from deeds, the data that comes from different types of sources, to build a working model that is able to predict. As I spoke about the different types of sources, yes, you can value your house on the system. Have we populated recent purchase values from deeds office? Where are you getting that? Yes, we have. To the best of our knowledge, we have the most recent transactions at deeds that have been digitized. Now ask how many people are in this meeting. This meeting is also being broadcasted on YouTube, so I haven't been able to check how many people are watching there. On here, there is 5-6 people keep coming and going. Yeah, does it work in a plowing field, empty plot? You would have to say, so when you respond to the when you respond to the queries that it asks you when you do the valuation, you have to specify it's vacant, it's an agricultural plot, and all of that, and that influences how it will do the valuation for you in that regard. So if any of that information is incorrect, it is going to value the information that you have provided. Julia, it depends on how what you're subscribing for. So in terms of our system, to just do valuations, you don't need to be a subscriber. But to get access to information as a valuer, you do need to subscribe On a monthly basis, is 375. Annually is about 2,500. I can provide you a link of the same. Oh yes, please go ahead, Julia.
Hi, sorry, it's just easier to talk than to write, but it helps when I know how to unmute the mic. Yeah, no, sorry, I think you have actually answered my question now. No, I'm just very interested in the, the tech, moving along with this tech. So, I think it's the right direction to go in. Can you hear me? Am I not audible?
Okay, no, sorry about that. I'll send you the link immediately after this. Those were a lot of very specific questions. Thank you so much for coming through and attending. We will be sending out the video of this presentation, or also it being broadcast on YouTube, so it will be available, I think, almost immediately at the end. Definitely happy to have coffee at any time. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending this session. I look forward to more engagements in this regard. We will have a specific day where we talk about the other features that we have on GoSmart Value. But today it was just about automated property valuations. I certainly hope you learned a bit about how they work and how they're being applied. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.